podcast about something where each week we dive deep into whatever it is we find interesting. I am your host, Calvin, and joining me from inside my webcam is your co-host, Nick Richardson.
Hey, what's up, Calvin?
I don't like that you're watching me right now. I feel very violated.
We're always watching you, Buster.
Somebody's always watching, and we are here to talk about today is Big Brother. Is the government spying on us? Has the government in any place spied on other people? Basically, are our rights being violated, or in reality or in fiction, have people's rights been violated in some way like that?
Most definitely. I
I
think
don't think I
everybody
did a
has
good job explaining that. So why don't you do it?
Well, I was just gonna say that everybody has an opinion on what Big Brother in fact is doing, and it's almost something that's always in the back of our minds. Like, could this possibly happen? How would it come about? And how would it come about? And where have we seen it before?
Right. And that's what we're going to explore. So, we're going to be looking at real world, fictional sometimes, and then just kind of our thoughts on it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I've been eager to talk about this subject, especially with the kind of the state of the world today. It's interesting to discuss, and it's something that a lot of people don't want to, mostly out of I don't know, a sense of fear, I think.
Yeah, that would be one part of it. But we're going to push some bounds today, maybe, and see where this goes. So you take the lead on this because, like you said, this is your thing. And I have thoughts on it. I didn't do a whole ton of research other than like my general knowledge of some of the fictional things we're going to talk about, and then just like my own personal thoughts on it. So
Right on. I'm not trying to dive too deep in the rabbit hole. I don't really want to lose anybody.
No, that's a scary rabbit hole, I think. And that was I was looking to do the research, and I'm like, I don't know if these are the places I want to go right now.
Yeah, no kidding. And when you do that
the
research,
rabbit hole I want to go down.
Oh, hell yeah. And then the government actually starts like, oh, God, you get on a list whenever you do that kind of research.
I was afraid just typing up my notes in this Google Doc that I have that I was going to get put on a list. So
everyone's on a list somewhere.
Yeah, I wrote down Julian Assange's name, and I'm like, should I not write that down? Well, I already wrote it now. I can't delete it. They already know I wrote it.
Yeah, you're fucked, buddy. So yeah, one of the biggest questions I start out with is what is Big Brother? And what I find interesting...
Let's just cover this real quick. We are not talking about the CBS reality show that my wife loves.
What? Okay, but yeah, we are not talking about that. We're talking about the fictional terroristic style craziness that we don't want to devolve to. And something I find interesting is if you Google Big Brother, you have to search for quite a while before you actually find a
lot of people watch that TV show.
Yeah, man, that's the first 12 articles I saw. I didn't even know it existed. Like, oh, okay, you learn something every day.
It's not good. It's like, let's take a bunch of people with nothing going on in their lives and stick them in a house together for 3 months.
Hey man, Real World lasted like 21 years or some crazy shit.
Yeah, this is somehow worse than that.
I bet you do not express that to your wife because she'll karate chop you, I'm sure.
Oh no, I do all the time. It's crazy.
It's on like
when it's on like 3 times a week. It's crazy. I guess we are going to talk about the TV show the whole time.
Nope, we're not going to devolve to that because that sounds like it sucks.
Let's move past it.
So for this episode, we're going to work with the definition of Big Brother as an all-powerful government who monitors and is involved in every aspect of a citizen's life. They have near complete control due to a threat of death most of the time. It's pretty basic, but I think you all get the gist.
I get it.
And something we can all relate to is opening with real-world examples. And I'm just going to open it with this. If any Chinese or Russian folk are listening to this, I apologize in advance, but I'm about to roast your nation like nobody's business.
I'm sure they're not the majority of our audience. So
most definitely. So all you American folk can most likely understand exactly where I'm coming from.
This will be weeded out before they're allowed to listen to it anyway. So
no shit. They'll just have like 38 minutes of quiet. Oh yeah, man, this podcast has really gone downhill.
So yeah, like you said, communist Russia, a lot of government involvement in the day-to-day lives. China, not so much anymore. But Cold War era China, and still a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of censorship that goes on in China
A
and a lot of
ton.
Asian nations.
Yeah.
And North Korea is another good example.
North Korea is probably my favorite example. They're just not as large scale as China or
Right.
Russia.
But it's probably the most significant form of this type of censorship and government being up all in your business.
At least that we can see, in today's world, with the advancements in technology, I imagine that, China has everybody under surveillance. Like they're talking about finding people for their credit and shit like that, like crazy stuff that you wouldn't really think about, at least government being involved. It's the best way I could say it. That having the say in how many kids you can have. Russians really hate gay people. Like they have a gay
Yeah.
police. That shit's crazy, man.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad stuff that goes on in other countries, and the level that we're at now is we should probably be thankful for what it is more so but we should also be skeptical, and we're going to talk about that of how it affects our lives down the road. But we also point out some instances in the fictional universes
Yes, most
that
definitely.
is a lot more prevalent. I think it happens a lot more prevalently in fiction because it helps writers and filmmakers to show this world that to kind of show the path that we could be led on if we let ourselves be. You take it to the extreme so that we can see that we need to stop it before it gets to the extreme. Some good examples: V for Vendetta.
Love that movie.
You've got the Hunger Games on here. Another one which deals with in the United States in present times, basically, is called Eagle Eye with Shia LaBeouf. Did you ever see that?
Yes, I
From like
did, man.
2008.
It's
That's
been
a
a
pretty
while
good
since
movie.
I haven't seen that in a long time, actually.
But it kind of captures this whole like everybody's watching you and they can find you if they need to kind of thing.
No matter what, and cut you down. They know everything about your life.
Yeah.
And I think, V for Vendetta really, I had to read that in college for a, dystopian future literature class, which was like the dopest class I ever took. And it's really fascinating how involved the government is in censorship and the forced like sterilization of people and all under one god and persecuting everybody else who didn't conform to that. And I mean, Hunger Games was like one of the most popular book slash movie series in the past 20 years. I like the books. I read all 3 books in, 2 days or something like that. Just because I found her writing style nice. But at the same time, it's pretty generic now. Like a lot of people can tap into that because we all have an opinion about it. So it's like, okay, we'll start with dystopian Big Brother style future and we'll go from there.
Yeah. And with the Hunger Games, I didn't read the books. I just watched the movies. I saw the first movie and I'm like, okay, I'm missing huge chunks of information here. My wife had read the book, so I'm like asking her the whole time, like, what's this? What's this? What's going on? And then the next 3 movies were just not good at all. The first one was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And the next 3 just were like completely forgettable. I don't like Jennifer Lawrence, so that didn't help. So yeah, let's start with a dystopian future and then figure out how we got there. And a lot of it comes from too much government involvement, and the government is the enemy.
It's always the enemy, and it just kind of depends on what exactly their heart stance is. Like a lot of times it's religion, a lot of times it's your work or something like that. Whereas in I think more of the older version of dystopian ideas or the dystopian Big Brother ideas in like Fahrenheit 451 in 1984 is really
I've never
just
read either of those books, but I saw they recently did a Fahrenheit 451 movie with Michael B. Jordan and Michael Shannon.
I did not see that.
It's not very good,
No
but
stress.
I know what the thing's about now. I always just knew it was about burning books, but I didn't know in what context, and now I get it, so I'm good.
Well, when you think about it, like when you say it like that, it's okay. That's a far out concept. It's something where I don't really put much thought into it, but I think it was Ray Bradbury that did Fahrenheit 451.
That sounds right.
And George Orwell did 1984,
Right.
and putting it in that literature format, I think it gives it a lot more, it obviously has more depth, and it really focuses on losing free thought, man, losing free will and free speech and just the freedom to be who you want to be. And, the burning of books in Fahrenheit 451, before I read that, I wasn't, I never really looked at books quite like that. Like there was, I was growing up when the internet was coming around,
Mhm.
a lot of information was digital. At that point, it's like, man, I didn't realize
Well,
books were that important.
and the movie, so because the movie was made in 2018, they made it like it was the future that would have existed in 2018, so the internet still exists. So how do you, like, I get it in the original novel, like burning books, that's your only source of knowledge is books. So once you burn the books, you can tell, as the government, you can tell the citizens whatever you want, and they have to believe it because that's their only source of knowledge. But so it was cool how in the movie they brought the internet into that as well, and basically the internet became the enemy as the government ran the internet and only allowed people to see what they wanted them to. So it was just like this other extension of what the government wanted, that everyone to learn. They just
Hmm.
added that to what part of the internet they could see.
That's kind of interesting. Because I mean, China is very much that way.
Yeah,
Isn't Reddit like completely banned in China? I I can't even imagine that. It's China or North Korea's got everything banned, but
probably North Korea.
I don't know if hmm I've never I don't know if there's really as many stakes in burning of books if you have it digitally.
Well, yeah, and that was the thing. They had along with burning all of the books, they had removed all digital traces of
Oh,
any
okay.
books
Well,
and
yeah, you'd have to do
anything that
that.
they didn't want people to see. Yeah, and then the internet just became an extent. They had like smart home things and everything like that, but the smart home would only do the things it was allowed to by the
Hmm.
government.
Well,
So if you asked it for additional information, like if you learned something outside of your knowledge base and you asked the smart home feature more about that, they would be like, I don't have any information on that. What are you talking about?
what
You're
the
going crazy.
and then they'd report you, and you
Yeah.
get raided that night.
Yeah, pretty much.
And with Fahrenheit 451, I don't know. I still thought 1984 meant a lot more to me, because basically it's really reflective of American culture. It's okay. I live in this Big Brother society. I want to resist. I don't know how, and in the end, is basically he's devoid of love for anyone but Big Brother. They completely fuck his life up. What is humanity without a little love? You know what I mean? That would just be such a cold, lonely, and boring existence. And another one, I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but it's really, really cool because it has a lot of the futuristic scenarios, kind of like in a society we deal with maybe 10, 15 years from now, is Equilibrium.
I feel like I've seen that.
It's kind of a bad Christian Bale movie.
Maybe
It's
not.
more,
I gotta look it up.
it's
I know
kind of
I've heard of
goofy.
it, but I don't know that I
Well,
watched it.
in that feeling, emotion is illegal. So they have their
Oh,
entire
I read about
society.
it, but yeah, I never watched it.
Yeah, they're all just numb dipshits. And
Hmm.
he kind of eventually basically gets down to the point where it's you have to kill this puppy. And he can't bring himself to kill this puppy, and he starts
That's
finding
always
like
the test
books
in
and
these movies: is you gotta kill a puppy.
no
I don't
shit,
know why.
man. It's like burn the damn book, but make me kill a puppy. I'm good.
Yeah,
Kill me. Peace. That is definitely a tight ass movie though. If you ever
I
get the
I've
chance.
heard of it. I gotta add it to my list because I had heard about it and I think I wanted to add it to my list and I just didn't, and it'll be added to the list.
Well, something I will say about that is you kind of get in all these you get a slight glimpse of like what is bringing on this type of society, but you
Hmm.
never really get the kind of step by step type things you would see if you were living in it. Like today we know about Nazi Germany, but obviously not living through it, we can't really see it.
Yeah, you can't see the
It's
little steps it took.
mm,
Like we just see like, okay, Hitler rose to power, and then the next thing is the Holocaust happened. Like you
yeah.
don't see how Hitler rose to power, what he did for the first several months, years, until he was just scooping up Jewish people at a alarming rate. You
Hmm.
don't get to see that step by step, and same thing within the movies. You just see that they're these power hungry government officials. You don't see really how they rose to power and why, because usually there is a reason. But like these people don't just rise to power for no reason.
No, there's definitely some sort of catalyst. And I think each has a theme that the catalyst kind of gives them the right to infringe upon freedom. So the thought of safety, or in the effort of safety and defense of the nation, they kind of strip you of your freedoms to better
Right. They
protect you.
slowly strip away the freedoms by promising you that it's for your own good or for the greater good in some cases of, we got to do this so that this can happen. And this will, the thing that's going to happen is going to make your life better. So we just got to take a little bit from you. Don't worry though. You'll totally get
Mm.
it back. Once the
Definitely.
situation's settled, you'll get all those freedoms back.
Oh yeah,
That
we'll
doesn't
give you
happen.
even more freedoms. You'll be freer than ever.
Yeah.
And then
And
it doesn't happen.
And well, the thing about these people, these leaders that rise to power, is they're actually very captivating, and people want to listen to them. They put on good speeches. They say the things you want to hear, and then they turn around and kind of fuck you in the ass when you're not paying attention.
Yeah, and then after a while they do it anyways when you're paying attention, because they've gotten away with it to a certain extent. You're
Right.
right. They all have that thing in
If you
common.
look at World War II, Cold War type of rulers that America and Britain were fighting against at the time, you got Hitler and Stalin and Mussolini. These guys were all very captivating in their speeches. They promised, when Hitler took over in Germany, it was they were recovering from World War One, and he showed them a better way than the fallout from World War One, which was just their country's a disaster right now. They're in a depression. So this guy, this captivating person who makes great speeches, comes along and tells them how he's going to save everything. You're going to back that guy.
Most definitely, and a lot of times they're
Because
often war heroes. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, when he came to power, but like on his way to power, he wasn't saying Jews are responsible for everything bad in
No,
the world,
definitely not.
and we need to
Definitely
kill
not.
them all. And it wasn't that type of rhetoric. It was just, look at the shit we're in. Here's what I can do to help us. And
We're
then
the German
once
people.
once he got into power, and it's the same with Mussolini, it's the same with Stalin, it's the same with Fidel Castro in Cuba. They have thoughts of how they can help their people, and people like that. People want to be helped because they're in a bad way, and they think
Hmm.
this person can make it better.
They want a better life, and I don't know about you, but as an American, I'm most of the time pretty damn proud to be an American, and I think everybody in each country feels their own sense of pride in their nationality, and a lot of times they play upon that big time, like we're destined for great things. And I don't know about you, I want to be destined for great shit. That sounds easy. That sounds pretty cool. And
Well, and that's why they call it nationalism,
yes,
because they want to play into that while also stripping you of things that you don't realize they're stripping you of.
yeah, that's what's really frightening too,
There's a
because
difference between nationalism and patriotism. Patriotism is a love for your country. Nationalism is, my country's the only thing that needs to exist, and the way I do things is right, and nobody else is right, and I'm the only one that deserves to be here.
and that's the scary part, is when
Yes.
they frame it in the mindset of patriotism, those lines can blur so
Well, yeah,
easily.
and that's when you kind of start to see these things happening, is you get this polarization of we're right, you're wrong, and the other side saying no, we're right, you're wrong. There's no compromise anymore, and the leaders start making scapegoats out of people that aren't necessarily at fault.
Yeah, most definitely.
Hitler with the Jews.
Mm,
There's a current example of people coming across the border right now. They're the cause of every problem that you ever had. Which
they're all
I,
criminals,
any
apparently.
pro any problem I've ever had has not been caused by a legal or illegal immigrant. So I don't know how people. I mean, we'll talk about where America is towards the end, but I just don't get that mindset of how somebody is somebody other than myself is at fault for my issues.
Because that's the easy way, my friend.
Well,
A
yes.
lot of people will, and there's a certain amount of outward stimuli that does affect your life and does bring you down, like the fact, we got to go to work and we may not like our jobs, but that ultimately doesn't change the disposition I have on my life. And when you
Right.
let, a focal point like a government dictate how you feel, eh, it's a slippery slope, my friend. It's a slippery slope.
Yes. And yeah, and that's the problem when you're just hammered by you. And it's a problem today because a lot of people are caught up in these media echo chambers where you're only watching your side of it. You're
Yes.
only on the internet on your side of it. You're not you're not finding any middle ground because you don't have to. You can just stay in your bubble and that's all you have to ever do. And then your bubble is always right because you never have to hear the other opinion. And when you do hear the other opinion, your bubble will attack that bubble. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, being reasonable is becoming rarer and rarer, which is really sad when you think about it, because if you're being unreasonable, then what's the point? Then we don't have a democracy, and then that's kind of, I feel like, when they can, I always question why societies don't fight back necessarily before, these big brother type figures come in, and a lot of it starts on a small scale, like you said. It's getting people to believe in that bubble, that individualistic sense of self and country, and anybody who disagrees with you, you start attacking. It's, right. I don't know, turning against thought that isn't shared with your own.
Well, and there's a point where you just decide it's not worth it to fight because right now you think you're just fighting with some idiot on the internet. So you're like, well, this person's never going to understand what I'm saying, so I'm just not going to do it. Mm-hmm. And everybody becomes complacent and stops fighting because you think you're just fighting, the idiot on the internet that doesn't know any better. But then that moves up and up and up, and it's the circular rhetoric that doesn't go anywhere. And you get stuck and like, I know there's a million times I've read things on, probably not a million, that's a high number, but a lot of times that I've read stuff online and the person on the other end is clearly an idiot and doesn't understand. And I've wanted to, like, I start typing a response of, like, putting out logic and reason and how to think things through of how that doesn't make sense. And then I'm just like, what's the point? What I just said is not going to make a difference to them.
No, and they're just not even going to listen to a fucking word I say.
Yeah, and as that goes up the ladder and up the chain, it doesn't work anymore.
Well, and as it goes up the chain, that group mentality starts to develop. They're the winners, and then they start attacking the losers, quote unquote, and isolating them even further. So expressing, your disagreement becomes even worse of a taboo.
Yeah. So when we've seen it in the last 4 years, obviously, is you get inside these the vocal minority edges out the kind of lesser vocal majority. Yeah,
it's scary.
The people, like you said, how reason and logic is becoming less and less common. That it's a problem because the people with reason and logic are the ones that aren't fighting the battles, and they're the ones that need to. But again, I like to think of myself as someone who uses reason and logic. After talking to you for several weeks now, I think you are too.
Absolutely.
I'm not one to start internet battles over dumb shit that is not going to get solved anyways.
Not worth my time. What is worth my time though is the little things. When I'm talking with
what house Hermione should have been in the Harry Potter. Like, she shouldn't have been in Gryffindor. She should have been in Ravenclaw, obviously. Like, those are the things you get in fights about.
Yeah, most definitely. Something that has a little less stakes in it, I think.
Exactly.
And speaking on someone, I'm going to tell a quick story, but speaking on someone that's just completely unreasonable, an example of what I see in today, or I could say this for later. It's up to you.
Go for it.
Okay, so I work with this lady who is Mexican. She immigrated from, not shout out, she's kind of a butthead. I hate to use the B word.
Reverse shout out. Shout in.
Shout on. I'm about to shout at.
Silent in.
Either way. She is straight from Mexico. She immigrated here as a teenager. Okay. And I was having a discussion with her the other day regarding the border wall. And she was adamant. There was nothing I could say that they're all criminals coming across the border. There's nothing but criminals pouring in. So I told her a quick story about this guy named Luis I worked with when I worked at Olive Garden.
Well, she knows she's one of those people, right?
I'll get there. Okay. So I tell her the story of Luis, of how he was a cook. And
shout out, Luis.
You're the man. I miss you, brother. You were super awesome. But he could hardly speak English. He was an illegal. But damn, dude, he knew chicken Alfredo on the fly. better than anyone on the face of the earth. So he knew enough English to succeed at his job, to let me succeed at my job. And I told her that, and in her mind, he's a piece of shit for even having the gall to come to America. Like he took a good job from, an American, and then that's when I said to her, you realize, like, so how are you different? How are you not a criminal? Like, what makes you a good person? And she didn't have anything to say to that. She just kind of,
Yeah. And then walked away.
Yep, and got real upset with me, and then now she doesn't talk to me anymore.
I bet if you were having that conversation online, she would have had something to say.
Oh yeah,
She would eventually come up with her reasoning.
Keyboard commandos out there,
Exactly.
but I didn't get upset with her, and I didn't yell at her or overrule her. I just hit her with the facts, man. It's just like, be reasonable, honey. When you lose that sense of being reasonable, it's just another step towards that bitter inevitable end.
Yeah, and I mean it's just like we said, it's just this gradual process of implementing and taking away freedoms, and giving a little and getting a little, and then eventually you're to the point where you're giving a little and getting a lot as the government, and like it's hard to fight because you don't even see it coming, and like the things we're talking about, net neutrality being turned off or voted against, that's something that theoretically, if you're thinking about it, okay, it's a free and open internet, except it's not, because the internet service provider, the large companies, can just gobble up everything and slow down anything else. Like, they just will take up all your bandwidth because they're now allowed to. Yeah. And that was an instance where, government involvement was necessary, because otherwise you're going to have one large company controlling everything, which gets you to the same exact point. If Google is the big brother in this case rather than the actual government, then what's the difference? They're still taking away our freedom to browse the internet as we want to.
Right.
And that's the same thing with border security. You get these little steps. You take out net neutrality. That's one thing. Now, okay, now our internet doesn't work the way we want it to. Now you get to the point where, okay, I'm with Verizon. I can't read any stories about T-Mobile now because I'm with Verizon, and Verizon doesn't want me to see those stories. And then you have border security, which is the next step. So now we're putting a cap on how much diversity we can have in our communities.
As Americans, the melting pot country.
Correct. The place where it's supposed to be one of the most diverse nations ever. Like,
that's what makes this country beautiful.
You're not supposed to have a cap on that. Yeah,
exactly.
And that's so it's hard to fight those things, because each one, like the net neutrality fight, it was never worth my time to fight that battle. Like, it was either going to happen or it wasn't going to happen, with no input from me or
exactly. Nothing
most other people.
I say.
Same thing with border security. Whatever's going to happen with border security is going to happen. It doesn't look like it's going the way that loud people want it to go, which is good. But if it did, nothing I'm going to say is going to stop that. So it's just these little steps that eventually get you to this place where, oh shit, we took 15 little steps and now we have nothing.
Yep. Now we're at this point of no return, and it's hard to come back from that. It's very, very hard to come back. Everything has that point. The point of where inertia carries you forward and over the edge.
Right. And and that's, I mean, I think when you get to that point of no return, something that shows that you're there, how you know that you're there, is you get this, people stop fighting. It's not only me and you that stop fighting, because we were never fighting to begin with, but more middle of the road leaders, state governments, your state senators, or your senators, House of Representatives, yeah, congressmen,
your elected officials.
Yeah, if they stop fighting because they realize it's not worth it, or they start buying, worse, they start actually buying into these thoughts.
Oh yeah,
that's when you realize that you're getting close to that point of no return. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like we're there yet with a lot of this stuff that's trying to go through.
Not quite, and something, it's almost as if you kind of wake up one day and you're there.
Yeah.
It's
and everybody's
so
just like, it's fine, don't worry about it.
Yeah, chillax,
and everybody that's supposed to have your back, the reason you voted for these people, They all of a sudden are just like, nah, it's cool. We got this under control.
Yeah, we know what's going on. We're not too worried. You're safe, right? You're safe. So okay, just let us handle it from here. And that's what I feel like a lot of people, take comfort in. So say you've gone over that point of no return. Most of the time, if you play by the rules, you're relatively safe, and a lot of people
Right.
are cool with that. They got food, water, shelter. Okay,
90%
I'm cool.
of people are going to be just fine.
And I could not imagine a life where I couldn't read a certain book I wanted to, or discover something on the internet because someone 2,000 miles away decided I couldn't because it hurts their pride or some shit.
Right.
So it's especially hard in that situation where they give enough advantages to the 95% that the disadvantages are just totally a thought you never even consider, and us 5%, we're the crazies.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there'd be a lot of advantages other than you may have a sense of safety. First of all, you wouldn't have to think very much for yourself if you're in this total
life.
Big Brother world.
Simpler
if you're
life.
in communist Russia, they tell you what your job is. That's it. All right.
Yeah.
All I have to learn is that job. That's all I need to do.
I'm gonna make bolts the rest of my life and suck commie potatoes.
You may not actually know what you're missing out on, which I mean, a lot of people that blissful ignorance is great for them. And the other advantage would be that you have this general sense of safety. If you know everyone's being watched, then you know you're not going to be attacked.
Right? It's like almost like the concept of if everybody had a gun. So it's everybody's got a gun pointed at each other.
That's a terrible concept, but
Dude,
okay.
yeah, that's probably a pretty terrible case. It sounded better in my head.
Let's not dive too far into that, but
it sounded better in my head. So I think you have a good point. Like, if everybody's being watched, then okay, yeah, I should be fine. And safety's a big deal to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and it is if you know that there's a camera on there's a big problem, especially in big cities, of women basically walking anywhere alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because men apparently cannot control themselves because men are idiots.
Yep.
If you were a woman in one of these worlds and you knew there was a camera on every corner, and you would feel a sense of safety. But then when they turn that around on you, and you go back to our example of V for Vendetta, and you can't be outside after 9 o'clock, and now everyone knows you're outside after 9 o'clock, even if you're just, you worked late and you're walking home late from work, like then that comes down on you, and now you're the criminal all of a sudden when you're just walking because everyone can see you all the time.
Right, and when you are turned into the criminal, people will take
then you
liberties.
Join up the mass murderer.
Well, people will take a lot of liberties in fucking you up. Like in V for Vendetta, those dudes were they were the law, and they were gonna rape that chick because she's a criminal, even though she's just walking home late.
She's a criminal, so you can get off for this crime if you help us get off. That whole thing can happen, and that's not any better because
that's a serious abuse of power.
Oh yeah, and that's what happens, and that's why these people get to the point that they try to get to, is that they're just power hungry for the most part.
And I think that power is a slippery slope, my friend. It's absolute power
Chaos
corrupts absolutely. Chaos is a ladder. That is such a great line.
It's a great line.
And
check out last week's episode on A Song of Ice and Fire.
Check it out. But I think that there's enough advantages in a lot of these Big Brother-esque societies. Like, if you look at it from America's perspective, obviously there's a ton of CCTV coverage, and for those of you that don't know what that means, it's basically camera coverage.
Yeah,
you can't
closed circuit television.
Exactly.
Basically, it's just running on a loop, or not a loop, but like it only goes to one place, and whoever has access to that one place can see it.
And a lot of that is in the the mindset of safety. So they'll give you a ticket for running a red light for in the interest of safety, but who dictates if you ran that red light? If there's no one else around, why does it matter? Blah blah blah. And I'm not advocating running red lights, but that's just an example for you guys.
Well, and that's what keeps America from being a dystopian Big Brother society. Is you run that red light, you get your ticket in the mail, you have a chance to go to court and kind of state your case of, I don't know, maybe you're in a hurry, you're on the way to the hospital, your wife's pregnant, she needs to go, she needs to get to the hospital. Yeah, there's no one else on the road, you can see from the cameras. Like, so we're at this point, where I work is a ready-mix concrete delivery business. So we have all these truck drivers out on the road all the time. And we are starting to put cameras on the trucks that can see, every side of the truck. It looks in at the driver, it looks out at the road. So in case there's an incident, we can see exactly what happened. And a lot of the drivers think, well, you're just going to be watching us drive all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like, first of all, none of management is going to sit there and watch the drivers drive all the time because they don't care.
Yeah, it's boring as shit.
Yeah, nobody's going to sit there and watch it the whole time. But at the same time, if you almost get in an accident or you do get in an accident and you're not at fault, this now proves that. And we've already had two kids been, I don't know, 4 months that we've been rolling this out. We've already had 2 cases where the driver's gotten, out of being at fault, where an accident or a near accident occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the past, before we had cameras, most of the time if an accident occurred with a large truck, like a cement truck or
you got nailed.
a semi-truck, it was the truck's fault. No matter what happened, it was the truck's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Because the police are going, first of all, they're going to believe the regular driver, and they're also going to think that the truck has so many blind spots. You can't see this, you can't see that, you should have seen that, but you can't. They're just going to think that the person that has more blind spots is at fault.
Yeah.
And so we've had cases already that have exonerated drivers in these cases. So it's like, no, we're not trying to watch your every move. If you're doing something stupid, yeah, we'll probably catch it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do stupid things while you're driving, because that's like our first and most important rule is always safety.
Definitely.
So like, don't be unsafe and you won't have anything to worry about.
Don't drive around taking bong tokes. You'll be cool. Everything will be fine.
A really good idea for the most part.
And I'll say something about, I work in security, so I monitor CCTV cameras pretty much 8 hours a day every day that I work, and a lot of my coworkers fucking hate me, dude, because
they think you're just sitting there watching them.
Exactly, and a lot of times I am watching them because that's part of my job description. I have to.
You're watching them, but at the same time, do you give a shit what they're doing?
Fuck no. I do not care.
If they have their 15-minute break and they take an extra 5 minutes, are you going and running and telling their boss? No, because you don't give a shit.
No,
and if they're stealing things out of the store, I don't know where you work, but if they're stealing shit, then yeah you're gonna care. But
most definitely, and a lot of times I've just they're so worried about being watched themselves, and that camera system, I swear to God, has saved us from like 5 lawsuits, which is pretty huge, because people lie like crazy thinking they're maybe not being watched or something. So that saved our ass. But people really hate my guts for the concept of me watching them.
And just like you said, if it's, again, no idea where you work, but if in let's say a retail scenario, the police are going to believe the customer first because it's a single person, and they're going to say, well, the company has insurance to cover this type of thing. So they're going to believe the single person unless there's some hard evidence against their story. So if a customer, it makes up some story and lies, like, they're going to believe that person. I mean, we've had the same thing at all our plants. We have cameras up and nobody's sitting there watching them, but it's got a DVR. If something happens, we can go back and look at the DVRs, and that's what the cameras are there for the most part.
And it's very, very helpful, and it's just that kind of give and take we got to give with security. To have that security blanket, we have to be willing to be watched all the time. So, I don't really want someone to see me picking my nose, but, if I slip and fall somewhere, I'd rather be on camera so my story is corroborated.
Right.
I care more about that than someone seeing me pick my nose, which...
Right. And again, nobody gives a shit that you picked your nose. Even if the person saw it, you know what they're going to do? They're going to laugh for a second, maybe tell their wife. That's it.
Yeah, most likely it'd be like, damn, this motherfucker.
They're not going to take a picture of it and put it up on the screen for everybody to see. Like, you're just going to move on with your life.
Yeah, I can speak to that as a fact, man. You have no idea how many people I see just, like, digging in their butts or something, just walking down and doing weird shit, man. I've never recorded it because I don't give a fuck. It's like, man, you're kind of nasty. You just dug in your booty.
You're not going to shake their hand if you see them in the hallway in the next 5 minutes. But
yeah, no shit. It's like, oh, man, get away from me. Your hand's like booty.
And what we're talking about is this is why people fear it. They think somebody is actually watching them. They want freedom, and to me, I don't even think they want freedom. They just want the illusion of freedom. You
Yeah.
take something like Google and Facebook. Like, Google knows everything about you, especially if
Mhm.
you have an Android phone. But every time you type something into Google, it knows. It knows what you want. It knows how you want it. It knows before you even type it. Before you even open up Google, they know you're about to search.
It's fucking
But
Google.
but they don't shove that in your face.
No.
It's a super helpful thing that they know everything about you, because when you are looking for something, or when something changes, like your patterns change or something like that, they also notice that and know your account has probably been compromised or you're dead,
Mhm. Or you're
and
dead.
can warn you about those things. Facebook, on the other hand, also knows everything about you, but they aren't afraid to let you know. Like,
Well,
they're just in your face. And the funny thing is, like, I feel like every 3 months there's a new story in the news that comes out about Facebook, capturing personal data from people,
mhm.
and everyone is so pissed off about it.
And does
And
nothing.
well, no, they do nothing. They keep up. I'm like, of course they have your data. You're literally giving it to them. How would
Yeah.
they not have it? You're putting it on your fucking page. You said you were in this place at this time. Of course they know. Like, why do you think that they wouldn't know that?
And why do you think they wouldn't share that when that's their whole business strategy?
Right.
We're lucky in the sense that like Apple and Google for the most part value security and the individual and shit like that. That could just be a facade for all we know. They could be just as bad as Facebook. They're just better at controlling the story.
Right. They don't shove it in your face.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
they don't let you know that they're stealing all your information. Or not, it's not even stealing. It'd be like, we're giving it to them. Every time I open my phone, I'm giving Google information about myself.
yep.
And that's fine, because a lot of times they use it to help me with things.
Exactly. And a lot of times it's catered to my interests and stuff like that, but it's a give and take situation, and it only you can only have so many of those before you're at the point where you have nothing left to give, and they've taken everything, and then you're stuck there like, yep, I'm kind of fucked. I have no sense of privacy, no sense of individuality. That's a scary
Right.
situation.
Right. There comes a point where they're taking more than you're giving. And
Exactly.
that's when you find that you're in this situation. So that brings us to the big question: are we getting there?
Hear me out.
Here in America, is this happening?
Hear me out. So, I think we're getting there, but we won't get over the hump. I think that
Okay.
you can look at, what's the big thing that prevents a lot of this stuff from happening is revolutions. And I think that we as American people, before this situation would come along, I think, it's just as easy for a reasonable person to get a gun as it is an unreasonable person to get a gun. And I'm not advocating
Guns
gun
are stupid.
violence at
Don't
all.
get
I
guns.
fucking hate guns. I cannot stand them. I think they're stupid, but if you like guns, that's cool. I don't really care. But my point
I just don't
is
see the need to have, like, this
30
stockpile
guns.
of 50 fucking guns. Like,
I could,
in what scenario is that a good idea? Oh, because they think the military is going to come knock on their door and try and take them from them.
so I better have 30.
Yeah, they better get their money's worth if they're coming to take them from me.
That says, see, I have
You're
an
gonna fight.
uncle.
You're gonna fight off the fucking military with tanks and missiles and bombs and, like, trained fucking people with your 30 fucking guns that you can only fire one at a time.
Yeah, your
Did you ever think
thermonuclear
that through?
warheads will shit all over you any day of the week. And I think there's two groups of people with guns. I have an uncle who has 52 guns and enough
Seems
ammunition. Oh my god, dude, he could literally blow an SUV to pieces bit by bit with all the ammunition he has.
But he
My
couldn't, because he can only fire one bullet at a time.
Exactly. And then there's my boss. He has
Shout out,
30 something
boss.
guns. He's a cool boss. I like him. But he has like 30 something guns. But he's a reasonable cat. He's like, mostly I just think they're cool. I consider safety. He has top of the line safes. They're always in them. He's not nonchalant about it. Whereas my uncle is just like, everybody should just be as comfortable with guns as I am. I should be able to wear it on my hip. I'm hardly going to lock it up, blah, blah, blah. What if someone breaks into his house? I think it's sketchy, and
Not a good idea. If
no,
you have guns, lock them up.
please do. mostly because no one wants to read about
Also, don't
kids.
have guns.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I've owned guns before. I've owned a shotgun and I've owned a handgun, mostly because I just thought they were cool and I wanted to say I owned a gun in my lifetime. But
Guns
as
aren't
I
cool.
aged, they're
Don't do
not.
drugs, kids.
They're not. um, so speaking about, is our country getting there? I think we've seen instances where we've gotten really close, like the Patriot Act. Like that was a big fucking deal in the sense of security. I know
Mm.
you were alive for 9/11. I remember
Yep.
exactly
It's in
where I
8th grade.
was. I was in wow, that's sad, but when I say it like this, I was in 3rd grade. And I was sitting in class. Me and my buddy Adam Bellfellow, who was Muslim, were the last 2 kids in class. And I remember the first tower got hit, and my teacher turned it on the news, and I saw the second tower get hit. And that was one of the craziest moments
I
I've ever
I
experienced.
did not see it on the news that day. Like we turned on the news because it happened towards the end of like second period, and then it was done by the time we got to third period.
Did you
So like
live in New
while we're
York at that time?
in upstate New York, very
Damn that.
very far north of New York, but I had a friend whose dad, like every 2 weeks, he would go down to the city. He was a police officer, so every 2 weeks he would go down to the city, work there for a week, and come back. And I was like, oh shit, is his dad there? And he wasn't there. And I know no one who was actually affected by it, which is good. Like I'm fine with that. But like I had that thought for 5 minutes until I found out he wasn't there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, so it was the end of second period. It was art class. Didn't hear anything about it in art class. Obviously, like there's no internet there. I mean, there's internet, but it's very slim. And nobody like there's probably 6 TVs in the whole school. Like every classroom didn't have a TV. Nobody's like dialed into the news the whole time. So on my way between second period and third period, I went by the office for some reason. I don't remember if I went in the office or if I was just walking by it, but there's like this girl in there crying, going like, "Oh, my uncle was there," or something, or like no idea who the girl was or what her story was, but she's just like there crying to the front office lady. And I'm like, all right, whatever I need to go to the office for, it's not important right now. I'll come back later. Like this girl's obviously having a mental breakdown of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Again, no idea what's going on yet. And then I got into third period and it was math class, and our teacher told us about it. They brought in a TV and we watched the news after it happened. To this day, I've still not seen any actual footage of it because I just don't want to watch it. Um, of like the actual planes hitting the building. I've never seen it, and I don't want to.
You're a
And
lucky man.
yeah,
You're a
and
lucky
so
man.
like we turned on the TV, and then I think we got a half day, and everybody went home, and it was a very weird time.
It was such a scary moment as an American. It was such a scary moment as a person because, fuck, dude, I
Well, and
didn't
then three
understand
more
what was
planes
going
hit
on. Yeah.
later, like throughout the day, and that
Mm-hmm.
was like after the fifth one hit, where they're like, all right, everybody just go home. Like we're not school's not equipped to deal with this.
See, what was weird is Miss Hogan, her husband was in the military, and that was my 3rd grade teacher. So he called her, and she put the news on, and then you just started seeing kids getting picked up, picked up, picked up, picked up. Like their parents are crying, the kids are freaking out because they don't know what's going on with their parents. But that was a huge event, and it obviously shook America to the core. It shook our sense of security. We fought wars for years over
Right.
this,
So
and
people at that point are willing to give up freedom to get more security. So
mhm.
things like that happen, and that's why there's all these conspiracies about that it was a false flag and blah blah blah. Like you're an idiot, whoever's spreading those conspiracies, but
it's
like
it's such a slippery
that's
slope,
how you
though.
get there. Yeah,
It's we got lucky in the sense that the American people at the time kind of knew that Dick Cheney was a fucking nutcase, and I think ultimately I think George Bush, if we're dealing with facts, is a war criminal. He invaded a sovereign nation without provocation. But the epic but we got fucking lucky, dude. He's reasonable as shit. He's a pretty true blue cat, and if he had listened to his advisors like Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and Condoleezza Rice and stuff like that, we would be living in this dystopian future that we've discussed for this past hour.
Mm-hmm.
We would have no rights, individuality, or freedoms for the sense of security. And it's crazy that one man, well, not one man, but pretty much one man was what stood between us and that. I find that fascinating.
Yes, that's very interesting. I disagree with you that we're descending into rule by Big Brother. I think that there is some watching going on.
Well, I don't think it'll happen completely.
No, like you said, I think there are powerful people who are trying to get us there, but I also think there are smart enough people to call it out and stop it.
Absolutely.
And to get us kind of back on track. But I don't think there's going to be ruling, but I think there is watching.
Definitely.
But
super
a big
hard.
part of that is, and we talked about it a little bit, I just think the general population misunderstands how their personal data is being aggregated and used by the government. Like the NSA is definitely collecting data on everyone as much as they can.
Most definitely.
And I mean, that was called out by people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. And a lot of that was due to the Patriot Act and things like that. So the NSA was able to collect all kinds of data on everyone.
And they
However,
still are.
Yeah, they definitely still are. Because, first of all, we give a ton of it to them through social media, through our cell phones. Like, we're just handing it to whoever wants it.
Oh, yeah, we're totally willing to use these services.
And you know, social media companies, cell phone companies, they're mostly using that to, you know, give us the right ads and make money off of it. But there are so much larger implications of that. People don't understand how our data is being mined and how it's being used. The NSA, you know, they've done terrible things with capturing our data and basically not letting us know. Like, I don't mind that they're capturing our data, but the thing is, when you do it behind our back, like, if you don't want to bring it to light, then maybe you're doing something wrong, is how I feel about it. But
most definitely.
Yeah, it's like we talked about with you with your security job, or us with, you know, watching drivers in their cameras. Like, for the most part, nobody's sitting in a room staring at me through my webcam at any point.
Right, going, how can I get this guy? Like, how can I rule
Nobody
his
gives
ass?
a shit what I'm doing, what I'm sitting here. There may be people doing that, but it's not the government. It's like hackers who are trying to catch naked women. Like, that's literally all these hackers are trying to do, is see if a naked woman, or if you do something really, really embarrassing, they'll probably try and blackmail you for it. But again, the government's not doing these things. It is somebody that you have given access to your computer in some other way because you're stupid with your computer. The NSA doesn't give a shit what I'm doing. They don't care. They don't want to watch me. They don't care what I'm emailing until it becomes a problem. Once it's a problem, then they can look into it. All of this data, they have millions and millions of bits of data coming from all over the world, coming from millions and millions of people. Like, there's no way anyone could monitor it. But what they can do is, if something is happening, they can look through their data warehouse and find connections.
Yep, find a plot line, and they can keyword shit, which is super convenient.
and again, even you can keyword stuff, but that's not going to connect it to me. That's going to connect it to a number, which that number connects to a different number, and that number connects to another number. And once you put all these pieces together, eventually you're going to find me. But it's not just like, all right, this guy picked his nose once. Here he is. Boom, we got him. All right, we got the nose.
We got this son of a bitch. Get him off the streets. They
don't give a shit about that. They don't like it. To me, I think it is good that some of this data is being collected because it's important. And we can even see it with things like mass shootings and the internal terrorist attacks that have been going on over the past couple of years.
Absolutely. Like,
the NSA has information on these people that clearly they aren't acting on. We're not in Minority Report here. Yet. That is the end game for this, I would think, is Minority Report more than 1984.
Yeah, I think...
let's try and stop things before it happens by finding these keywords and these markers and connecting the dots before they're connected for us.
But still, we would have that underlying fear of, it's basically thought crime. Like, how can you have free will if you're dealing with thought crime all the time? You can't even think this shit. But they justify it with the sacrificing of freedoms. So you sacrifice your freedoms for the security of, of yourself against people that are thinking of hurting you, but at the same, it's a double-edged sword. At the same time,
Oh, yeah.
if you think things, you're fucked. They'll take your ass.
Well, right, like we joked about at the beginning. I said the NSA is going to be after me because I typed in Julian Assange onto this Google Doc that I have.
You're
Like,
on a list now, bro. I swear
yeah.
to God.
Oh, I'm sure I
Definitely.
am. Like,
Definitely.
just posting this episode is going to get us both put on a list. And I've never used my last name on this podcast, but they'll know that it was. They'll be able to find me if they really need to.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too
Shout
hard.
out NSA.
Hey, man, you guys are doing an okay job.
Share this with the other NSA members. Get some downloads on it. Come on.
Yeah, we'd greatly appreciate that, and review us on iTunes.
Review us on iTunes, and if you want to sponsor us, we'd be up for that too.
But
you can listen to anything you want if you sponsor us.
we want to be secure. That's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the gist of what we've discussed is Big Brother bad, but Big Brother can be
Big Brother mostly bad.
Mostly
can be
bad.
useful, but mostly bad.
Useful is a great phrase for it, man. Useful, if you can harness that as an individual, yay. Great on a societal level. It's a slippery slope, but as long as people maintain their individuality and their free will and reasonableism, I don't think we'll ever see that happen, at least in our country, in our lifetimes.
No, we're a lot closer to other different dystopian worlds affecting us than I think a Big Brother dystopian world.
Yeah.
Which we talked about a little bit, and we don't need to go into. That's depressing.
It's so sad. It's too sad.
Yeah. So, on that note, on that very uplifting note, make sure to rate and review us on iTunes. NSA.
Yeah.
Get those downloads up for us.
Well, and we appreciate you guys listening, and we definitely want to hear what you think about this episode.
Yes.
Get at us on Twitter at APA something or alone_podcast.
That's where we are.
Well, that's where we are. We spend a lot of time on there, and we love interacting with you guys. I'm really curious to hear what you have to say.
But just know you'll also be put on that list with us.
Yes. So, are you willing to sacrifice that?
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see who is willing. Who has the balls to communicate with us and get put on our list?
I challenge thee.
It's not a very dangerous list. You guys will be okay.
Yeah, you'll be just fine. It's not like we're that epic yet, but
no. Check out those cats. They provide all the music for Podcasts About Something, and there's some cool stuff over on our website, podcastaboutSomething.com. There's a donate button on the About page where you can donate us money, which we love, and we also have Patreon, patreon.com/podcastaboutSomething.
Check that Patreon page out, guys. We got a ton of cool stuff. We got
a lot of great stuff.
Random reviews. What else do we got, Calvin?
Pilot projections, and coming up soon, next week, War Get To Me.
That's gonna be so much fun, guys. So
getting into the Game of Thrones.
I cannot wait. So join our Patreon today, guys. Every little bit helps us.
Yes.
And you want that extra content because who doesn't love hearing us talk?
And we've got a lot of great Game of Thrones insight, I bet.
Yes, especially coming from two cats who are pretty smart and have read the books or listened to the books.
I think we're just going to rewrite all the episodes as we go through them. We're going to be like, oh no, this is what should have happened. This would be a better story than what they're going to put out there. We'll see.
It's quite possible. So check us out, guys. Rate and review us on iTunes, Twitter, and Patreon. And you guys stay sassy.
Stay classy.